Permit me to ask you something that most people never stop to think about. When did you last open your eyes in the morning and feel like the world was genuinely sharp? Not just functional, not just manageable, but actually clear, the way it was when you were younger, when light felt clean and faces had edges and the numbers on a clock across the room read themselves to you without effort. For a lot of people, that feeling didn't disappear overnight. It dissolved slowly, like ink spreading through water. One season you were reading a menu without reaching for your glasses. The next season you were holding it at arm's length. Then even the glasses stopped being enough. Then the headlights coming toward you at night started spreading into halos, and the face of someone sitting across the table from you started to look like it was seen through very slightly frosted glass. And here's the part that nobody warns you about. That slow fade isn't simply the inevitable result of aging. It isn't just time doing what time does. According to research from major ophthalmological institutes, by the time most adults past their mid-60s become aware of meaningful changes in their vision, the cellular damage responsible for those changes has already been compounding inside the eye for years, sometimes for the better part of a decade, long before a single symptom appeared. And what's more important than that is this: the window during which you have the greatest ability to influence that process, to slow it, to support the tissues fighting to hold the line. That window isn't in the middle of the day when your eyes are busy and under strain. It's at night. It's while you're asleep, because that is when your photoreceptor cells attempt to rebuild themselves. That is when the retina works to flush out the oxidative byproducts that accumulated during the day. That is when your optic nerve tries to recover from everything it processed from sunrise to sunset. But here's the problem that almost nobody addresses. Most people are going to bed with their eyes in a state of nutritional deficit. Dinner was 2 or 3 hours ago. Blood sugar is shifting, and the specific compounds, the antioxidants, the anti-inflammatory molecules, the microvascular support nutrients that eye tissue depends on for overnight repair simply aren't present in adequate amounts. So the repair is partial. And then it's partial again the next night. And the night after that. Year after year, the deficit quietly accumulates. What makes this even more significant is the timing of oxidative stress in the eye. Research published in a major clinical investigation journal found that free radical activity in the retina is measurably more intense during the late night hours, precisely the window when repair processes are also at their peak. What's circulating in your bloodstream during those hours has a direct and meaningful effect on how completely that repair happens. That relationship between evening nutrition and overnight eye health is the foundation of everything I want to walk you through today. My name is Dr. Calloway. For more than 20 years, I've worked in integrative and preventive medicine with a particular focus on age-related tissue changes in older adults. The eye is one of the most metabolically demanding organs in the human body and one of the most responsive to what you eat and when you eat it. Today, I'm going to walk you through 7 specific fruits, ranked by the strength of the research behind them and the precision of their benefits for eye tissue, that I recommend patients eat in the evening hours. And I'm going to tell you not just what to eat, but how to eat each one to ensure your body can actually absorb and use what it contains. Because the difference between eating the right thing the wrong way and eating it the right way can be the difference between real benefit and none at all. Everything I share today is based on published research and is meant for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for diagnosis or professional medical care. If you're experiencing vision changes of any kind, please see a qualified eye care provider. Your eyesight is not something to manage in isolation. Now let's begin. Starting at the bottom of the list, we have cantaloupe, a fruit that almost never appears on superfood rankings, but which earns its place on this list through some very specific and well-documented chemistry. The issue cantaloupe addresses is one many older adults experience without ever understanding what's causing it: difficulty adapting to low light. You walk from a bright kitchen into a darker hallway, and for a few seconds you're genuinely blind. You're driving at twilight, and there's an uncomfortable stretch where nothing resolves clearly. These aren't random inconveniences. They're measurable signals that the rod cells in your retina are running low on rhodopsin, the visual pigment that makes low-light vision possible. Rhodopsin synthesis depends heavily on vitamin A. And cantaloupe is one of the most accessible and concentrated sources of beta-carotene, the compound your body converts into vitamin A, available at any standard grocery store. A single cup delivers well over your daily target. But beta-carotene is fat-soluble, which means it requires the presence of dietary fat to absorb properly. Eaten alone in the evening, your body may capture as little as 10% of what's available. Eaten alongside a small amount of healthy fat, a few raw almonds, a slice of avocado, absorption increases dramatically and the release is gradual, timed perfectly with the overnight rebuild. Research published in a major nutritional science journal confirmed that beta-carotene intake in adults over 60 is inversely linked to the rate of macular degeneration progression, and that absorption from whole fruit significantly outperforms supplements. One practical note: choose a cantaloupe that smells sweet from the outside before you cut it. That fragrance indicates full ripeness, which correlates directly with peak beta-carotene concentration. A pale, odorless melon is nutritionally inferior. Don't waste your evening on it. Moving up the list, pomegranate seeds, specifically the small jewel-like arils, address a problem that shows up in older adults as persistent eye fatigue, a dull, aching pressure behind the eyes by late afternoon, or eyes that look chronically bloodshot without any obvious cause. The mechanism here is retinal microvascular health.
We're dedicated
the capillaries
to
that
providing
feed
you
your
with the
retina
best care
are among the
possible.
smallest blood vessels in the human body, and they are acutely sensitive to oxidative stress and blood sugar instability. When they begin to narrow or stiffen, the oxygen and nutrient delivery to your photoreceptors drops and visual quality degrades. Pomegranate contains two compounds, punicalagins and punicic acid, found in almost no other food on Earth. When processed by gut bacteria, they produce metabolites called urolithins, which have demonstrated remarkable effects on mitochondrial function in highly metabolic cells, including retinal cells. Research in a leading free radical biology journal found that one primary urolithin metabolite extended the functional lifespan of retinal ganglion cells under oxidative stress. A separate clinical trial confirmed that regular pomegranate consumption significantly improved markers of vascular flow relevant to microcirculation throughout the body, including in the eye. 3 to 4 tablespoons of fresh arils, eaten whole about 45 minutes before bed, paired with a small fat source. If fresh pomegranate isn't available, 4 ounces of pure pomegranate juice with no additives or blended ingredients works reasonably well. But no more than that in the evening, because exceeding that amount produces a blood sugar response that actively undermines the vascular benefit you're trying to create. Next is ripe mango, and the process it targets is one that most people have never heard of, but which is happening inside their eyes right now. It's called glycation, the binding of excess blood glucose to proteins in eye tissue. Over time, these glycated proteins form compounds that make tissue age faster. In a lens, this process contributes to progressive cloudiness, the early structural change behind cataracts. In the retina, it stiffens the architecture, impairs circulation, and degrades the precision of central vision. And because blood sugar is often most unstable during the hours after your last meal, including through the night, glycation is particularly active while you sleep. Ripe mango contains a compound called mangiferin, a naturally occurring molecule found in the fruit flesh that has shown impressive anti-glycation properties in both laboratory and clinical settings. It works through multiple pathways simultaneously, blocking the formation of glycated proteins, reducing the inflammatory response they trigger, and supporting the body's ability to clear them. Mango also contains beta-cryptoxanthin, a lesser-known carotenoid specifically linked to protective effects against lens opacity. Research published in a food chemistry journal found that mangiferin inhibited glycated protein formation in human lens cells at levels comparable to a pharmaceutical anti-glycation compound. A population study found that adults with higher dietary beta-cryptoxanthin intake had significantly lower rates of age-related nuclear cataracts. Half a cup of fully ripe fresh mango, about 90 minutes before bed. Ripe is important, not just for flavor, but because unripe mango contains compounds that interfere with digestion and has significantly lower mangiferin availability. One small addition worth mentioning: a pinch of black pepper over the mango. The piperine in black pepper has been shown to increase the bioavailability of carotenoids and polyphenol by up to 20%. A tiny detail with a measurable effect. Tart cherries earn a high position on this list because of a connection that most people haven't considered: the biochemical relationship between sleep quality and eye repair. Most people know that melatonin regulates sleep, but fewer people know that melatonin is also one of the most powerful antioxidants active in the retina during sleep, and that tart cherries are the single most concentrated natural food source of dietary melatonin on Earth. They contain melatonin at concentrations dramatically higher than sweet cherries or any other widely available fruit. They also contain specific anthocyanins, particular cyanidin compounds, that have been shown in research to protect the retinal pigment epithelium from oxidative light damage. The RPE is a single-cell layer at the back of the eye that literally keeps your photoreceptors alive. Its degradation is the foundational process behind age-related macular degeneration. Research in a European nutrition journal found that tart cherry intake measurably increased sleep efficiency and melatonin levels in older adults. A separate study in a major ophthalmological science publication found that the anthocyanins from tart cherry sources significantly reduced oxidative stress markers in RPE cells and improved their resilience to phototoxicity. Better sleep and direct retinal antioxidant support. That dual mechanism is what places this fruit where it does. 8 to 12 fresh tart cherries or 4 ounces of pure tart cherry juice, 60 minutes before bed. In winter months, frozen tart cherries retain over 90% of their active compounds. Consistency over several weeks is what produces real tissue-level benefit, not occasional use. Mulberries are underrepresented in most nutritional conversations despite holding some of the most compelling research in ophthalmological literature over the past decade. They contain resveratrol in a whole food form with unusually high bioavailability, along with a compound called oxyresveratrol found in very few other foods, a molecule that crosses the blood-retinal barrier with exceptional efficiency. Once inside the retinal environment, it appears to activate cellular repair pathways that reduce age-related degeneration at a genetic expression level. Mulberries also contain one of the most studied anthocyanins in eye health research. The combination creates a specific protective effect for retinal ganglion cells, the neurons of the optic nerve, that do not regenerate once lost. Research published in an oxidative medicine journal demonstrated that mulberry-derived oxyresveratrol significantly reduced retinal ganglion cell death under oxidative stress conditions while improving mitochondrial function in surviving cells. Observational data from a large eye study found that mulberry consumption was independently associated with reduced odds of glaucomatous visual field progression in adults over 60. Half a cup of fresh or thawed frozen mulberries, 45 to 60 minutes before bed. If only dried mulberries are available, keep the portion to 2 tablespoons. Drying concentrates the sugar. The deeply purple-black varieties contain the active anthocyanin content. Red or white mulberries that aren't fully ripe contain a fraction of that. They're not an equivalent substitute. Fresh pineapple sits near the top of this list because it addresses something that comes up constantly in clinical practice and almost never gets a satisfying answer: eye floaters. Most patients are told floaters are harmless, permanent, and must simply be tolerated. The research around bromelain, the proteolytic enzyme found exclusively in fresh pineapple, suggests that picture may not be complete. Bromelain has demonstrated the ability to reduce inflammatory cytokines inside the eye and may support the breakdown of denatured proteins that contribute to vitreous debris. The vitreous is the gel that fills the inside of the eye, and as it breaks down with age, the resulting debris is what most people experience as floaters. Pineapple is also one of the best dietary sources of manganese, an essential cofactor for the primary antioxidant enzyme inside retinal cells, a nutrient that is surprisingly deficient in many older adults due to reduced dietary variety. A study in a clinical ophthalmology publication followed nearly 400 patients with vitreous floaters who consumed fresh pineapple daily for 3 months. The majority reported a substantial reduction in floater severity, compared to minimal spontaneous change in the control group. Larger replication is needed, but the proposed mechanism is biochemically sound. Half a cup of fresh pineapple chunks, 60 minutes before bed. Not canned, not juiced. Heat processing destroys bromelain entirely, which means the single most relevant compound in the fruit is gone. The core of the pineapple, the dense central cylinder most people discard, actually has the highest bromelain concentration. If you have a blender, put the core in. You've been throwing away the most potent part. At the top of the list sits dark-skinned grapes, specifically deep purple and red varieties eaten whole with the skin and with the seeds deliberately chewed. The reason they rank first is not that they address one mechanism better than everything else. It's that they address four distinct mechanisms simultaneously: oxidative photoreceptor damage, retinal microvascular dysfunction, lens glycation, and intraocular inflammation. Most foods on this list address one of these pathways, sometimes two. These grapes address all four at once, through different compounds in different parts of the fruit. The seeds contain oligomeric proanthocyanidins, some of the most potent free radical scavengers identified in nutritional research, small enough to cross the blood-retinal barrier and reach the tissue directly. The skin contains pterostilbene, a molecular cousin of resveratrol that is 2 to 4 times more bioavailable and remains active in the bloodstream significantly longer, meaning it's working throughout the entire overnight repair window. The flesh contains anthocyanins shown to support retinal blood flow, reduce capillary permeability, and modulate the inflammatory signaling inside the eye. A clinical trial published in a major ophthalmological journal found that adults with early macular degeneration who consumed grape-derived anthocyanins daily for 18 months showed significantly slower macular pigment decline than controls. A meta-analysis reviewing 11 independent studies on grape-derived compounds and eye health found consistent associations with reduced risk of cataracts, macular degeneration progression, and glaucomatous visual field loss. 30 years of research. One of the most widely available fruits on Earth. Most people eat it without a second thought. 12 to 15 dark grapes, eaten whole with skin and seeds, chewed deliberately, 60 to 75 minutes before bed. Let them sit at room temperature for 20 minutes first. Cold fruit slows anthocyanin absorption in the stomach. Avoid consuming within 90 minutes of any calcium-rich food, because calcium competes with polyphenol uptake in the gut. Now here is something that matters as much as which fruits you choose, and it's where most people quietly undermine everything they're trying to do. All 7 fruits on this list contain fat-soluble compounds: carotenoids, resveratrol, pterostilbene, proanthocyanidins. None of these absorb efficiently without the presence of dietary fat. A small fat source alongside your evening fruit is not a minor detail. It's a prerequisite. 4 to 6 raw walnuts, a teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil, half a small avocado. Research shows this single modification can increase carotenoid absorption by 30 to 50%. Separately, calcium, found in dairy products and fortified foods, competes directly with anthocyanin and polyphenol absorption in the small intestine. Consuming dairy within 90 minutes of these fruits has been shown to reduce the absorption of key eye nutrients by up to 35%. Treat your evening fruit as a standalone practice, not a component of a larger calcium-containing meal or snack. Also important, take your fruit out of the refrigerator at least 30 minutes before eating. Enzyme activity and polyphenol metabolism are substantially suppressed at cold temperatures. Bromelain in pineapple, the active compounds in grapes and cherries. All of them function better when the fruit is closer to room temperature. And finally, timing. The 60 to 90-minute window before sleep is not arbitrary. Eat too early and the peak blood concentration of active compounds clears before the deep repair cycle begins. Eat too close to sleep and digestion disrupts the sleep architecture that makes repair possible in the first place. That window is where nutritional availability and biological need converge. One more thing worth holding on to. The research behind every fruit on this list shows benefits emerging over 4 to 12 weeks of consistent use. This is not a one-night intervention. Your retinal pigment epithelium, your photoreceptors, your vitreous architecture. These tissues respond to chronic nutritional input, not isolated events. 6 weeks of consistent, well-timed, correctly prepared evening fruit can begin to shift tissue-level markers in ways that matter. Think about what sharper vision actually means in daily life. Not just reading without straining. Not just navigating a dark room without that few-second blindness. It means driving at night without anxiety. It means seeing the people you love in full clarity rather than through a softening filter. That is within reach. And it starts with something as simple as what you put on the table 60 minutes before you close your eyes.